The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am Commander-in-Chief Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, quick show today. Jalyn Holmes resigns with the Commanders. This was a deal that I was looking forward to. I told you guys, I think multiple times last week, and even maybe Saturday on the live stream, that that was another guy that I expected them to bring back. I actually thought he played well for us last year and earned an opportunity to be back on this roster, or at least compete for the opportunity to be back on this roster. And so they bring him back. No surprise there. There may be one more guy, Jeff Driscoll, I think, of the remaining group that is left of the Commanders who were here last year, who haven't been re-signed. I think there are only 4 guys left. Seibert and Jeff Driscoll, and I think I forget one more, I believe, 1 or 2 more guys, but I don't think any of the other guys will be re-signed. I think Driscoll and Jalyn Holmes were the only other 2 that I could see being back here in any capacity. But then again, I didn't see Michael Dieter being back. I didn't see Cleveland Farrell being back, and those 2 have been brought back as well. So what do I know? Everybody else has either been signed to another team or is back here. And that's actually something that's pretty interesting too, is we signed a bunch of guys here to 1-year deals last year. We had a few guys that were on rookie deals from the last regime, whatever the case may be. A lot of guys from this roster have signed elsewhere, which it almost felt like, you know, once upon a time, this was the stepping stone, your last opportunity to prove you could play in the NFL. If you couldn't cut it here, nobody else wanted discarded Washington Commanders trash, right? Now, you know, guys are getting opportunities elsewhere. It's actually fun to see, you know, and we'll always keep tabs on guys that were here to see how they're doing elsewhere. And yeah, Jalyn Holmes is re-signing here, makes it 72 guys now on the roster. And we've talked about this. The number can get up to 90 as they head to camp. So 18 roster spots remain. So they're still not done. Remember, we only have 5 draft picks as of right now. I still expect that number to end up somewhere around 7. You know, I don't think we're coming out of this draft with any less than 7 players. Then you factor in undrafted guys. Let's just allocate another 5 to 7 there. And you look up and you're, you know, hovering right around 90. Now, again, let's take a look at the roster right now. And as you can see, Deron Payne is your highest paid player. Speaking of paid, couple of bonuses were handed out today. I just saw this on Nikki Javala's X account that Terry McLaurin got a roster bonus today. Same with Marshawn Lattimore. And then Sam Cosmi's full 2025 salary was guaranteed today. So not that they were moving on from any of those guys, but that would have been the deadline if you were going to try to avoid paying someone a certain amount of money. Like, that's what you see around the league when teams have that deadline that they're facing. They try to move a guy, they try to trade him. If that can't happen and they know they've got a roster bonus looming. And that's why I talked about, you know, the different waves of free agency, because you have that first wave where people are throwing around money, you know, crazy money all over the place. I call it stupid money, right? People are throwing around stupid money, that first wave of free agency. Then you get into the second wave, which is where we are right now. And that's where you see some of the lower end guys, the guys that teams felt like they could wait on, but still are very interested in bringing them either back onto the team or signing them. Like Juan Thornhill got a 1-year deal from the Steelers today. You know, that's a second wave signing, right? And then, so what's this process is complete. It's all draft. And then once the draft is done, you get post-draft free agency, because again, teams are going to ultimately release some guys that they thought were going to be on the roster, or at least had them there as an insurance policy in case they didn't come away with certain positions via the draft, because you just don't know what's going to happen in the draft. You may go into the draft saying, hey, we'd like to acquire this position, and that position, and you may ultimately do that, but you may get it in the form of a 5th, 6th, and a 7th round selection, guys that may not be able to help you right away. Whereas you were hoping to come away with a second or a first or a second round defensive end, but the board didn't fall that way. You don't want to force the issue, right? You don't want to, reach for a guy instead of taking the second best, offensive guard. You took the 8th best defensive end, and that's how you get yourself into trouble, right? We know that all too well. That's what happened with Jamin Davis. That's what happened with Emmanuel Forbes. That's what happened with Fedarian Mathis. We know that all too well about reaching for players at positions of need instead of drafting the best player available. So I think what you're going to ultimately see is another wave of free agency after the draft. Teams feeling comfortable with their position, moving on from veterans, maybe looking to add some undrafted guys, having to make space, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll see some of those transactions take place, and that'll open up another realm of free agency. And then obviously you have post-June 1 cuts. A lot of teams designate those guys now. They don't wait anymore, but you'll still have a few guys that, seep through the cracks there. And then teams get to a point where, okay, post-June 1 cut, and they slice and dice a couple of guys there. And then obviously you have after the final cuts have been made from 90 down to 53, there will be some players like Noah Brown was last year, a casualty that may end up here in Washington. So lots of time between now and the start of the season to continue to improve this roster. But Jalyn Holmes' signing adds the number, or adds to the number that is now 72 Commanders under contract. So we're getting close to that number, because again, you have to save that allotment for the rookies that are coming in. And again, don't just think about draft picks, also think about guys that are going to be on undrafted guys as well. So you could, in the position that we're in, we're probably going to be like last year. How many undrafted guys did we bring in? We brought a ton of them in. It had to be every bit of 10 to 15 guys that were undrafted last year. I remember doing a video because there were so many. Generally, I stay away from undrafted, conversations, because those guys aren't going to make the roster. But because we were turning the roster over, that was an important part of the process as well. And we ended up keeping a number of those guys, and then and a few others ended up being on this practice squad, and guys that we'll be talking about this year, like a Ben Nickel, for instance, who hasn't gone away, still going to be here. And I think they like him a lot, and he could easily weasel his way onto this roster at some point in the very near future. And there are other guys that they also like. But remember, Colson Yankoff made this roster as an undrafted rookie last year. Tyler Owens made this roster as an undrafted rookie last year. So don't just, wave off the undrafteds. You can't do that anymore when you have a roster like ours that is continuing to turn over, and they're trying to find young pieces to add to the mix. You cannot just dismiss undrafted guys either. So as you can see, Deron Payne is your highest paid player on the roster, which kind of sounds crazy to say, but it just also speaks to where we are right now. Tunsil comes in. Terry McLaurin is your second highest paid player. And again, with an extension, you'll bring this cap number way down. This is why a lot of people who just assume, oh my God, you see what Cincinnati gave Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, they can't get a Trey Hendrickson deal done. Now they got to trade him. Actually, it's the direct opposite. They've created more cap space for 2025 that would allow them to sign Trey Hendrickson to a deal if they so choose, because that cap number, Jamar Chase was going into the 5th year of his rookie deal. Jamar Chase was a top 5 pick. I would assume that's every bit of 11, 12, $13 million that he was going to cost in that final year of his deal, whereas might even be a little bit more than that. Whereas now that number is going to come down significantly, because he's going to get a ton of money in bonuses, and that base salary in year 1 is going to be extremely low. Same for T. Higgins, extremely low base in your first year of your contract, because you got so much money up front on a signing bonus. You're not really hurting for your base salary to be 15, 16, 17, 20, 30, 40 million dollars. So Trey Hendrickson's deal, that's why they're working on it as we speak right now, he's probably not getting traded. And I didn't think he was going to get traded because Cincinnati was going to want a haul for him, and teams just weren't going to give that up for a 30-year-old pass rusher that you also had to pay, right? So I think he'll end up being back in Cincinnati. But I digress. Laremy Tunsil, $21 million. As you can see, you go down the list: Marshawn Lattimore, Frankie Louvu, Sam Cosmi, Andrew Wiley, et cetera, et cetera. These are all your cap hits for this season. But as we go down the list, you see the number of guys that are on the roster. That's pretty much why I wanted to come here and have you look at this, because you start to see some names here that are intriguing to me. And I want to talk about a couple of those names here in a second. But because I want to pose a question to you all who are out there about this roster as we head into draft season, essentially. I mean, now that free agency is pretty much in the rear view mirror, now we turn our attention to the draft. And I want to talk about two guys that were in the draft last season and this is where coaching and development come into play. Let's continue to go down this list, and then I'll talk about what I want to talk about. So as you can see, a lot of these names are guys that were brought in here last year. So I say, don't discount the draft and undrafted guys. Javonte John Baptiste, 7th round pick. Tyler Owens, undrafted. Colson Yankov, undrafted. Villamie Fiocco Jr., that's a name that I think you need to remember. He was in Dallas. They brought him over here last year. He was on the practice squad. They may like him. I wouldn't be shocked if he's getting run in the preseason, and if he's able to, somehow weasel his way onto the practice squad. Feels like or weasel his way onto the roster. It feels like a practice squad guy that they want to continue to try to work with and see if he can develop into something. But same with Andre Jones, who was here last year on the practice squad, that was here from the last regime. Sam Hartman was a rookie, you guys know, at the quarterback position. Norrell Pollard is another name that you should not dismiss as a guy that they really liked out of Virginia Tech last year. Undersized defensive tackle that can get in the backfield, that plays quick off the ball. Don't just sleep on him. Kaz Allen, we've talked about him and a potential move to running back. Made it seem like he was moving to running back, so I wouldn't dismiss him. Ben Nickel is the guy I keep bringing up as a core special teamer. They love their core special teamers around here. I mean, how many more years are you getting out of Nick Ballore? How many more years is Jeremy Reeves here? Even though Reeves is still relatively young, I see no reason for kicking him to the curb. But just saying, Ben Nickel is here for a reason, right? They're going to keep him around. Don't dismiss him. Michael Wiley is a guy you guys know I liked last year, but I'm looking to upgrade that position significantly. Now, where Wiley may, come into the fold and into focus is when there's no more Austin Eckler, right? When Eckler is fully gone from this roster after this season, that's because his game is very similar to that of Austin Eckler is Michael Wiley. So for me, Wiley doesn't really come into focus until there's no more Austin Eckler on this roster. One more year of Wiley on the practice squad, then Eckler's gone, and then Wiley may become a guy that becomes interesting at that juncture. Again, you still got the draft, and they may go out and get Austin Eckler's replacement via the draft. And so those are all options that we can address at a later date and time. But again, that's what I think of Michael Wiley kind of represents on this roster. Keep this name in mind, Aneem Dankwa. I'm going to talk about him here in a second. Nick Ballore, I just brought him up as he re-signed with this team. And then you see all of these guys who basically are free agents that we brought in either from the outside or re-signed. Eddie Goldman, Sheldon Day, Kevon Seymour, Dietrich Wise, Jeremy McNichols, Noah Brown. So you see all these numbers. It totals to 71. They did not add in Jalyn Holmes yet. He will make 72 on this roster, which leaves 18 roster spots. So again, you do the math, 5 draft picks right now. I think that number is going to get up to 7 because I expect some trade backs, but it could just be 5. It could stay at 5. It could be reduced to 4. They could find a guy that they like, package up some picks, move in, move up, get them, and get out of this draft for all we know. And then you have to factor in undrafteds. And then I think you're going to see a couple more guys be signed in this second wave of free agency. So the question that I wanted to ask you guys today is 2 guys. I want 2 names from you of players who you feel like need to show growth in year number 2. And I'm going to give you 2 players, but and you can do yours the same way I'm doing mine, or you could just give me 2 guys straight off the roster. You can give me 2 guys straight off the practice squad. It's up to you. I'm going to give you 2 guys, but I'm going to give you one that's on the active roster and then another that is on the practice squad. And I want year 2. I want guys going into year 2. Okay. So guys that were rookies last year that you're looking for growth. And this is where coaching comes into play. This is where a player and his development comes into play. Guys willing to put in the work, understand what is necessary. Year 1 is always about filling out process for young players. A lot of times, kind of figuring out what that leap and that jump from the collegiate game to the NFL, that pro game looks like, the speed of the game, what it means to take care of your body. It's a much longer season than it is in college. All of these things. What are the things that I need to improve upon to be the best version of myself at this level, right? So I'll give you 2. I'm going to start with the guy that is on the roster. And for me, it's Jordan McGee. Obviously, injuries robbed him of an opportunity to really show what he could do last year. I was really impressed with the small sample size of what we got from him, whether it was the second Giants game, or it was the second Eagles game, or it was, the little bit that we got, I think, in the Saints game, or it was the, I think he played in the Bears game as well. There were flashes with Jordan McGee this season where you go, okay, I see exactly why. And I was a big Jordan McGee fan coming out of Temple. So I expect him to take that leap, because next year they're going to probably want to move on from Bobby Wagner. I believe this is Bobby Wagner's last year here in Washington. Again, who knows? Bobby Wagner could be an all-pro yet again, and they could just decide, you know what, why the hell not, and just bring him back again, right? And keep going on this one-year deal thing until it doesn't work. But I'm figuring if they had it their way, they same thing with Zach Ertz. I really truly believe if Ben Sinnott had shown them enough, if Jordan McGee had shown them enough, had been healthy last year, I'm not sure if either one of those guys are back this year, despite how well they played. But that's the name of the game, right? Is, hey, these veterans have come in here. They've shown their worth, not just on the field from a production standpoint, but also as leaders in the locker room. I mean, last year, Bobby Wagner showed his leadership qualities and the importance of having veterans like Wagner in the locker room when he gave the team that speech after the 3-game losing streak, going into that Titans game right before the bye week, when this team was sleepwalking. And they didn't lose another game until the NFC Championship game from that point forward. So, Wagner's importance can't be undersold or understated. However, there is, I think, a level of confidence that they have in Jordan McGee that if he stays healthy, he will be the middle linebacker of the future for this football team. And if there's one position that Adam Peters has been known to hit on in his career as an assistant general manager and be a huge part of, it's the linebacker position. He's hit on that position many times in the draft, or been a part of, that 49ers group in particular that's hit on late round, mid-round draft picks at the linebacker position. And so I think this is another one that we can add, as McGee is a 5th-round selection to that mix if he can just stay healthy. Saw the flashes last year. Really think that this guy has immense talent. And I think that's the guy that I'm looking for in year 2 to have that massive leap. As for a practice squad guy, this is what we don't talk about enough as fans, because generally with the practice squad, it's out of sight, out of mind. And I get that. I'm not a big practice squad, undrafted rookie conversation guy, because a lot of times those guys don't factor into the overall scheme of the program. They don't factor into the roster moving forward a lot of times. So I don't really feel like spending a lot of time talking about those guys is a good usage of our time together. However, when you look at how you build a program, some of it is growth and development, right? taking guys undrafted wise, taking guys in late rounds, putting them away on the practice squad for 2 years, and then having them finally make your team, and not only just make your team, but become key contributors. I look at it, and again, we're going to constantly use the Eagles as a measuring stick and an example because they're the standard right now. They're the gold standard, not just in this division, and not just in the conference, but really in the league, having, won the Super Bowl, having made 2 trips in the last 3 years, and dominating the Chiefs in a way that we haven't seen Patrick Mahomes dominated ever in his career. And that goes for the Tampa Bay game. Patrick Mahomes was never down 34 points in his career ever, right? That was one of the most jarring, defeats we've ever seen. The score does not indicate how much of a one-sided ass whooping that was. So with that said, the Eagles are the gold standard right now, whether you like it or not, or you don't like it. But one of the things they do really well is they develop young talent, especially on the offensive line in particular, young offensive and defensive line talent, right? And, we talk about the trenches being important and how that can change the outcome of games, alter seasons, and alter the path of your future. If you can protect up front, if you can open up holes in the run game up front, if you can stop the run up front, if you can get after the quarterback up front, you have a chance to be a very tough team to deal with. That said, we've been talking about the offensive line, particularly the tackles, with this team and what the future looks like for this team at the tackle position. Right now, kind of in flux. Really don't know what's the right tackle position is going to look like. We feel like we've at least nailed down the left tackle position, at least for the foreseeable future, maybe the next 2 to 3 years, with Laremy Tunsil. We're going to talk about him because he had his press conference with the media today on a Zoom press conference. So I'm going to talk about some of the biggest takeaways from that here in a bit. But we feel like we've nailed down that position with Tunsil's arrival for at least the next 2 to 3 years. But now the right side is where the focus is. And look, Brandon Coleman may be the answer at right tackle. I'm not so sure about him being the answer at any tackle position on this team. I, for one, feel like he is more suited to be a guard. But I've stated that and I've stressed that enough times. So you already know where my position lies there. But whatever they decide to do, whether it's Coleman out there, and again, I've said this all offseason, Brandon Coleman is the key to fixing this offensive line because it's his development that's going to either stunt the growth of this line or it's going to accentuate it and fast track it. Because if they decide, let's give him a try and a run at right tackle and he struggles there, well, now it's another year of you not investing in the right tackle at the right tackle position because you're assuming that Brandon Coleman can handle it, right? If they say, you know what, going to put him at left guard, going to keep Wiley at right tackle, and we'll address tackle next year. But then there's a guy on the roster that I'm going to be watching very closely this year, and Aneem Dankwa, a guy that was drafted out of Howard, a guy that was undrafted out of Howard, ended up here on our practice squad. And this is a massive, massive man, like 6'8", 360 pounds, 35 and some change inch arms. Like, this is like just super raw, obviously. Came from Ghana to the States, went to Howard University, was able to showcase his skills enough to the point where NFL teams were interested, landing him a spot at the combine. And so here he is on our squad as an undrafted guy. And I want to see development and growth out of him. For years, we would roll out the same 2 or 3 bum-ass backup tackles that had no opportunity to make this team under Rivera and crew. Every year be the same, sad sack of offensive linemen that we knew had no future here, right? There was no upside with any of those guys. You didn't get excited about any of those guys that they brought out here every year that were going to be on the practice squad. They were just bodies, right? I can't even remember their names. Some of you may be able to remember some of those guys' names. I can't, right? Because we knew they weren't going to make the team. They weren't any good, and they were only good for preseason reps. Well, this is a guy that I'm interested in seeing Can he develop? Can he grow? Can that first year here in the NFL with him getting reps on the practice squad, seeing how the game goes, understanding the speed and seeing how some of this stuff operates, can he, get himself into tip-top shape, be ready to rock and roll this year? Can he take advantage of being on the practice squad, redshirting and learning? And could he be could he be a Jordan Mailata, right? Like, that was a 7th round pick, guy that came over from England, was a former rugby player that they developed for 2 years before, throwing him out there. And then look at what he's done for the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, that's an anomaly. That's not the norm. That's an outlier, is Jordan Mailata. But, you just never know when you're going to find that next gem. And I want to see if Aneem Dankwa looks overmatched in the preseason, because he's going to get a lot of run in August. And this is a massive man, right? It's a massive, if nothing else, can we possibly find a swing tackle in Aneem Dankwa? Like, I'm just trying to see if there's any value with him, because you don't find guys that size coming into the NFL very often. And his movement skills are solid. They're not great, but he's 6'8", 360. I mean, what did you expect him to do, right? So we'll see, what I want to see. I can't speak for anybody else out there. I want to see what he will look like. So that's a name of a guy that I'm looking to see what year 2 development looks like. And I put that on the staff, right? I put that on the offensive line coaches to see what they can do. Can they maximize this guy's skill set and his talents? Give him some things that he needed to work on in the offseason to be better, and then see if he comes out and does those things, right? So those are the 2 guys. And I know there are plenty more guys. I kind of wanted to give you guys an opportunity to give me some names of guys you'll be looking to see. And if you want to expand that conversation to guys that are veterans on this roster, i.e. Marshawn Lattimore, knock yourself out. And if you got, an explanation as to why, I'd love to hear it. I see everything in the comment section. So that said, let's get to Laremy Tunsil's conversation with the media today, and then we'll get out of here. Tunsil spoke with the media for, just a bit over, I think it was 9 minutes or so long, close to 10 minutes, I think, today. And so the biggest takeaway, and then we'll just get into some of the other sidebar conversations that happened. The biggest takeaway is he's going to want an extension. I was talking to Derek B about this. Shout out to my guy, Derek B. We were talking about this back and forth. We were DMing each other. And we were talking about Tunsil potentially wanting an extension. And Derek B was like, there's no way the Texans just traded this dude for no reason. Part of the reason they traded him is because he probably wants an extension. And I said, I don't disagree with that. Generally, that's why guys get traded in this league. It's especially if it's not performance-based. Laremy Tunsil was still one of the best, or is still one of the best offensive tackles in football, especially from a pass blocking perspective. And you can start to bring up the penalties if you like, but those penalties didn't cost the Texans a ton of yards. Most of them, as I highlighted already when we talked about the pros and cons of adding a Laremy Tunsil onto this roster, was they were false starts. And while you don't want them, again, who wants 2nd and 7 to turn into 2nd and 12? Not me. Who wants 2nd and 3 to turn into 2nd and 8? Not me. Who wants 2nd and 10? Who wants 3rd and 2 to turn into 3rd and 7? Once again, not me. So again, I'm not excusing that behavior. I'm not telling you that those penalties don't matter, but they weren't holding. They weren't hands to the face. They weren't these 10 and 15 varieties that absolutely kill you. 5-yard penalties can hurt a drive as well, but they don't hurt a drive and they don't kill a drive like 10 and 15-yard penalties do. And he didn't have any of those last year for the most part. They were mostly, lining up in the backfield because the league was cracking down on the tackles not getting too much depth in their stance. And then it was false start penalties, like procedural penalties that you can clean up. And he talked about that in his presser, like, he said that was unexcusable and it can't happen again. And I got to clean that up, and I will. Right. But Derek B was like, he wants an extension. That's why the Texans traded him. And I said, I don't disagree with you. I think they traded him because they saw a 30-year-old, 31-year-old tackle who's still playing at a high level that had value, but they didn't want to be the one to pay him this extension. Not when they got to pay, as you saw today, Derek Stingley got that massive extension, making him the highest paid corner in the NFL's history with that 3-year, $90 million extension, right? I said he's the best corner in football to me. I think he's better than Patrick Surtain II, but that's me. I think he's better than PS2. I told y'all how I felt. They came out in the same draft, and I told y'all how I felt about Derek Stingley. I said if he's healthy and he's locked in, because that was the only concern was after that crazy first year when in 2019 when they won the Natty with Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, and all those guys that were there, and Jamar Chase. That next year was COVID. A lot of guys didn't play, and in that 2021 year, he looked disinterested. Like, I'm just trying to get to the league, bro. So they got to pay him, or they just did pay him. They got to pay Will Anderson, and they got a slew of other young guys that are super talented that they're going to have to take care of at some point, including CJ Stroud. And so instead of having that money on the books, instead of not being able to take care of some of the younger guys that you really feel good about, let's just move on from him, get what we can get, and just continue to get younger on that roster. And that's what they decided to do. But Laremy Tunsil's answer when he was asked about whether he wanted an extension here or not, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, so Adam Peters and the guys in that building know how I feel. That conversation obviously is gonna stay between us, right? The organization and myself, but they know where I stand on that, which is, to me, he's saying, yeah, no, I want an extension. They know I want an extension. They know I want new money, but they may have voiced to him, hey, you come in here, you play at the level that we think you should play at, right? The level that we expect you to play at. And we got no problems because he got 2 years left. So they still got a whole nother year after this year to get an extension done. If I were the Commanders, that's how I would look at the situation. You haven't done anything for us yet. So if it were 1 year left on his deal, you'd feel compelled to do it right now, right? Because if he balls out, then you'd have to put the franchise tag on him, make it turn into a messy situation. However, he balls out for you this year, or he just does the things that you expect him to do, and you're like, okay, cool. He's one of these tackles that, because, the tackle position is one of those tackles. These guys to play well into their 30s, even to 40. We saw, Trent Williams is currently doing it. And I don't like comparing guys to one of the greatest to ever do it. But Trent Williams is currently on his path to 40. We saw Jason Peters do it into his 40s. Not that he was playing at the highest of levels, but Jason Peters was playing at a very high level, probably at age 35, 36. He started to kind of taper off. And then he was kind of just hanging on with 1 year deals all the way to like the age of 40. But Jason Peters hung in there for a long time. Andrew Whitworth was playing at a very high level. I think he might have been 38, 39, maybe even 40 when he retired. And he could have played another year if he so chose to do so. But he decided to retire because he had a lot of opportunities to work for networks. As we can see, he's doing that right now. So tackle position is one of those positions. You keep yourself in great shape. And you stay away from the injury bug, you can play a lot of years in the NFL at the tackle position. So 31, this isn't like corner or running back where there's no country for old men. You can play tackle, for a very long time. He's still potentially in his prime. He said, I feel like I'm still in my prime. I don't doubt that at age 31. I don't doubt that. So he plays well this year. There's an extension with his name on it, but I can't give you an extension based off what you did for Houston. I need to make sure that you come in here and do what you did there here, maybe even better. And then you definitely can get that money from me. I got no issues paying you at that point. So I think there has been dialogue and conversation surrounding that situation. We'll see if he wants his money now before he even sets foot on the field for the Commanders, or if they've got a mutual understanding. Hey, you go out, you ball, and then we'll take care of you after that, right? Either way, I gathered from that is that, yes, I do want an extension. He didn't come out and say that. Obviously, he can't say that, and it doesn't really benefit him to say that, but the writing's on the wall based off of the answer that he gave. Because if he didn't, he could have easily just said, nah, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to prove myself. Like, that's what you hear guys say when they're not asking for an extension. They want to prove it so that they can get paid. If I want to get paid, which is not something you hear players talk about dudes generally don't talk about their money in the media, which they shouldn't. We're gonna keep that between us. Yeah, that translation. Yeah, I want an extension. Why wouldn't I want an extension? I want guaranteed money. I want some more upfront money. And you see all the money that's being given to all of these tackles. If I feel like I'm one of the best in the league, and I'm watching all these dudes get these crazy deals, you see the number. We just went over the number Laremy Tunsil's making, right? He's right around $22 million a year. The best tackles in football are making upwards of 30. Like, that's the new number now, right? Quarterbacks are making over 40. The elites are making 50 to 60, right? Tackles are now making 30 a year. Receivers are now making 30 a year. And as we just saw with the Derek Stingley extension, corners are now making 30 million a year, right? So he's all the way down at the lower end of the spectrum at 20. He's trying to get up there where the rest of those guys are, up towards 30. So I do think that conversation is going to happen. My hope is that it's later rather than sooner, right? But we'll see what Laremy Tunsil is looking for, as we get closer to camp. Hopefully this isn't an issue in year one. I don't think it will be, but you never know, right? That said, he talked about getting traded. He said, look, it's a business. I've been here before, because remember, he was traded from Miami to the Texans. He said, I got no ill will towards the Texas organization. I appreciate them for giving me the opportunity that they did. He also said that it was a lot smoother transition from when Miami did it than when the Texans did it, because he said in Miami, they didn't even give him a heads up. He's like, I took a nap, I woke up, I was traded, right? Nobody called me, no one informed me of what was going on. I was kind of in the dark, and then boom, I was traded. At least with the Texans organization, he's like, Nick Caserio, D'Amico Ryans, they both called me, they talked to me, they let me know what was happening. So I was informed. I wasn't blindsided. I knew I was getting traded. He talked about the energy in the building. He's like, and everybody talks about that, because you get that warm welcome when you come to Washington, where everybody's lined up waiting on you, clapping for you. DQ's there, AP's there. Joe Witt's not Joe Witt. Well, Joe Witt's probably there too, but offensive line coach is probably there, offensive coordinators there. Everybody's there to greet you with this warm welcome, make you feel like a part of the family, which you are. And so he's like, man, the energy and the juice in that building was, crazy. And he talked about blocking for Jayden Daniels. He's like, he makes my job hella easy, because he's like, there's no downside to blocking for a mobile quarterback. He's going to make guys miss. All I got to do is pretty much my job. And even if I don't make the perfect block, he's going to make me right, essentially, is what he said. He also talked about the comparison between he and CJ Stroud. He's like, both of those guys are so mature beyond their years, so football savvy and high football IQ. So he's like, I see a lot of that in Jayden Daniels just from watching him from afar. I've talked to people around the league that, know him, know DQ, and they talk about how good of a guy they are. So he's like, I'm looking forward to blocking for him, looking forward to getting acclimated with this offensive line room. He talked about going out to dinner with them. The offensive lineman, that's a big thing. Eating for those big ass dudes is a big thing. They love to go out and eat, and that's how they bond with one another. So he talked about, kind of fitting in with the room and doing some of that. He talked, one of the knocks that we heard about Laremy Tunsil coming in here, and you got to take everything with a grain of salt. One of the knocks was supposed to be he's not a great leader. He's a guy that wants to do his job and kind of stay to himself, but he's not one that is a tremendous leader. And not everybody is built to be a leader. Not everybody is a rah-rah guy. Not everybody is that type of dude. But he made it seem as if, no, I'm coming in here. I'm looking to be a leader. I'm looking to, show, work and lead by example, but also work, be a leader by, being vocal. If I got to take some guys under my wing, he said offensively, defensively, it doesn't matter. I want him to do that. He talked about some of the OGs that he had when he was coming up in the game. And that was a nice little throwback. Jermon Bushrod and Brendan Albert, I think he was talking about. And he also said, if I'm not mistaken, Mike Pouncey. And he said they told him, look, this is not a young man's game or an old man's game. It's a young man's game. And so he's like, I didn't take it personal when Houston traded me, because it's a young man's game. And they got a lot of young players that they want to sign. And he was like, yo, they just gave Derek Stingley Jr. a big bag. Good for him. But he said, I get it. I'm not upset about it. And he said, I keep my body in tremendous shape. So I think I can be one of those dudes that plays well into their 30s, heading towards their 40s, because I got a great plan in the offseason. Like, I come back to Auburn, I work with this strength and conditioning coach for the University of Auburn, and we got a plan. And it's been something that's worked for him, kept him in tremendous shape. He's like, I played all 17 last year plus the playoffs, which were an additional 2 games. So he played in 19 games last year. He's like, and I'm hoping that continues to be the trend for me moving forward. So he said, look, I play wherever they want me to play. Obviously, he's playing left tackle. He's like, I play running back, I play wide receiver. He's like, I play quarterback. He's like, yo, if you need me to back up Jayden Daniels, I'll do that. That was kind of funny. He was like, yo, throw me a pass, I'm open. And I'm surprised nobody in the in the press run didn't say, well, hey, look, he threw a touchdown pass to a tackle last year. So you never know, man. Your number could get called, right? So they laughed about that a little bit, but all jokes aside, he sounds like a dude that's gonna fit in here really well. And he said, look, I want to hold that Lombardi like my baby, bro. Like, I really, really want one of those really bad. You're getting a guy highly motivated to come here and try to win. He hasn't won. I don't even think, if I'm recollecting his career, because all he's known is Miami and Houston. Neither one of those teams has been to a championship game. Right? The Texans these last 2 years have gone to the divisional round. I don't think the Dolphins went past wild card weekend his entire career in Miami, if they made it that far to the playoffs, because they weren't a good team most of the years that he was there. So this is the dude that's starving for some postseason success. So you're getting a highly motivated guy. They asked him about his motivation, and he said, I'm internally motivated guy. I don't need external motivation. Because they said, hey, since you've been traded, does that give you added fuel to prove people wrong? He's like, nah, I think it all stems from the whole gas mask incident, when he was getting drafted out of Ole Miss, and he was going to be a top 5 pick. At one point, if you can go all the way back in the time machine to that draft, he was literally rumored, like he was in the conversation to be the number 1 overall pick. Then the gas mask thing happened. It was the craziest shit I've ever seen on the day of the draft. I've never seen anything like that particular draft. He was in the mix to go number 1. Was he going to go number 1? We can't say for certain, but he was in the mix. Then the gas mask thing happens, and he drops all the way to like 13th, and the Miami Dolphins stop his slide, and the rest is history. And I think from that point on, he's had a chip on his shoulder to have to prove people wrong, whether it's, the off the field stuff or just, being consistent on the field. But he talked about that, and he said, I got a chip on my shoulder. So I feel really good about Laremy Tunsil coming here and what he's going to provide us. He also said I don't think he's ever been an all-pro. So he's like, Jayden Daniels can help him with that. He's like, I got to get the penalties down. But if, Jayden Daniels can elude a couple things and I do my thing, hey, I need that all-pro. You win in this league and you're on a good team, you get those kind of accolades. So he's like, yo, I need that all-pro, right? Because he's trying to get paid, right? Like, we all know how that goes. If in his first year in Washington, he's an all-pro, that just bolsters his claim that he wants to get paid. That just pushes the price up a little bit. So he's like, yo, I want all of that. That's a good problem to have, by the way. So that was Laremy Tunsil and his presser in a nutshell. Looks like a guy, sounds like a guy that's going to fit in here well. I think I talked to you about Jonathan Jones's presser. Same thing, another guy that seems like he's going to fit in here incredibly well. Very, very mature guy. Obviously, he's been in the league for a decade now. So you get that he's mature, but he came from New England. He's buttoned up. He gets it. He's all business. And you know what? One of the conversations that we had last video, and then I got one super, and then we'll get out of here. So one of the conversations somebody brought up, and I'm trying to think who it was because it was one of our regulars. I can't remember exactly who it was, but they said that they didn't understand the direction of Adam Peters this offseason, and they didn't think we got better anywhere but left tackle. And I vehemently disagree with that. I don't understand. And again, To each its own. Everybody's got their opinion, and again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I just don't see how you can look at the roster as it's constructed right now, and in the roster that we had last year. I just don't know how you can look at the two and say that we're not better. How much better? We're gonna find out, but we're better. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Now the question is, can we replicate last year's success? That's the $1 million question. And can we exceed that? But there's no doubt in my mind that this roster is better. Right now, it's better. This is a better roster. So now the question is, how much better? Is Will Harris an upgrade? Because the corners are better. Like, you can't look me in my eyes and convince me, and I'm listening to every word you say. You can't convince me that the corners, we're not even done at the cornerback position. But you can't tell me that having just addition by subtraction, just not having Benjamin St-Juste, Emmanuel Forbes, and Michael Davis on the roster, you're just better because those three aren't here. Just off the strength of them not being on the roster, you're better at cornerback. Not to mention Marshawn Lattimore's here. Not to mention Mikey Saberstill is in year 2. Not to mention they brought back Noah Igbenogany. Not to mention they added Jonathan Jones. Like, that group is significantly better than the group that was here last year. You can't convince me otherwise. So, again, we could have our discussions about the defensive line. The linebackers, I think, are going to be better this year than they were last year, right? Because you're going to have a healthy Jordan McGee. I'm speaking that into existence. You're going to add in a young set of legs in Dominique Hampton, who's physical, who can run, who I think is going to make a really good complement to that group. So I think that's a younger, faster, more athletically gifted group than it was a season ago. Obviously, the offensive line is much improved just off of the Laremy Tunsil, addition. The running back group, we're going to add. You can't, I'm convinced we're going to add another guy in that room that is going to add explosiveness. That's going to tie that room together. Receivers are already better just off the strength of Deebo Samuel being here. They're already better. I mean, think about it from this context. Your number 2 receiver last year was Noah Brown. And he was playing like a low-end number 2 last year until he got hurt. He's now your 3rd option at receiver behind Deebo and Terry. So you're just better off the strength of that. And then I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with KJ Osborne. He got here in December, people. Like, I don't really know what you thought he was going to do, right? I guess we all thought he was going to do something, right? He did nothing, but I've already laid it out for you. Guys that got to their respective teams in November, at the end of October, during that trade deadline period, they weren't even guys that moved the needle and were able to produce anything for their teams. That's part of the reason why Amari Cooper is still on the streets right now. People think he's washed at this point of his career. He's only, 30 years old? How old is Amari Cooper? He's not 35, but that's how we're treating him because he did nothing in Buffalo last year. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with KJ Osborne. That group is better right now than it was last year. So, again, I don't know how you can look at this roster and say it's not better. We're deeper on the defensive line. I don't know how much more talented we are on the defensive line. I can tell you we're way, way more deeper on the D-line. We were playing Carl Davis in the NFC Championship game. I can't overstate that. We were playing Carl Davis meaningful snaps in the NFC Championship game. Out of necessity, Carl Davis played over 30 snaps in the NFC Championship game. That's not allowed. And we did that. We're way deeper on the defensive line than we were last year. So I just think this roster is deeper, it's stronger, it's better than it was last year. How much better? Well, that's the key. We'll find out. That's going to be the key. How much better will determine how well this team plays, how far they're able to go, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section real quick, and then we'll get out of here. Derek B, been a member for 42 months. Salute to my guy, Derek B, who writes, JD led us in rushing the last 3 seasons. Would have led us in rushing the last 3 seasons. Need RB1. Yeah, you're probably right. We haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher since Antonio Gibson crept over a G, I believe, in his 2nd season, right? If I'm not mistaken, he crept over a G in 2021. So 2022, 2023, and last year, yeah, he probably would have been our leading rusher. That's accurate. We need RB1. I don't know if you're looking for RB1 or if you're looking for a compliment to Brian Robinson Jr. I don't know if that's the case right now. They may be looking for, again, Brian Robinson Jr. is going into the last year of his deal, so they may be looking for RB1. Whatever the case may be, I don't really give a shit. I think we're arguing over potato or potato, tomato or tomato. Like, I think we're arguing over whether you're eating a gala apple or you're eating, you know, some other type of apple, a Macintosh apple. What are you like? We need a running back. I don't really give a shit if it's an all-purpose 3-down back or if it's just a speed home run threat back. I just want somebody here with speed with space and opportunity, they can take it the distance. We don't have that guy. I would like to see that guy here. That's all I'm looking for, right? Whether it's a 3rd down change of pace guy and they look to draft the, you know, RB1 next year, or it's, you know, RB1 or, you know, because I love Quinshon Judkins. I take him in a heartbeat. And that's RB1. That's not a change of pace. That's RB1. Travion Henderson feels like change of pace. 3rd down back, speed. He's undersized at 205 pounds. He feels like a change of pace. I'd love to have him, right? You can't go wrong with either one of the Ohio State backs. To me, they're 2 different backs. One's an every down back, right? Well, at least 1st and 2nd down for sure. And the other is a home run threat and a guy that is a monster in pass protection, which screams 3rd down change of pace back. Both of them would be welcomed additions here and phenomenal additions here. So again, like, what are we talking about? All right. D-Free Sports. D-Free Sports Talk. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB for 4 months. Really appreciate you. Who writes, do you see us trading Payne for more picks? No, I don't. Anything could happen. I wouldn't rule it out. They've signed so many defensive linemen, so many guys that could play the interior, that I wouldn't be shocked if we got to draft day, because I told you, by hook or by crook, one way or another, we're coming away with 7 players in this draft. All right, so we got 5 right now. We're coming away with 7 players in this draft, some way, somehow. And maybe it is trading a guy like Daron Payne, you know? And this is the year you would trade him, not next year, because he's got 2 years left on his deal. So this is the year you would trade him if you were going to trade him. So, but again, in a draft where there's so much defensive line talent, I just find it hard to believe someone wants to eat $26 million. You know, I don't know what his actual base salary is, but whatever, I just find it hard to believe that you're going to pass up an opportunity to get, again, unless you're in that win now window and you think that Daron Payne is going to help you win now. Like, the Vikings are in win now mode. Like, they felt like they had an extremely dominant defense last year. They just didn't have enough pieces offensively, but they feel like they can win something big. And that's why they went out and signed Jonathan Allen. If you're a team that thinks you can win now, then Daron Payne interests you more than a rookie defensive lineman, a defensive tackle. But I just don't know if I see us wanting to trade him, 1, and 2, I don't see anybody wanting to engage in that when there's so many talented defensive linemen in the draft this year. But you never know. I wouldn't rule it out. John Perez, my guy, JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, JP, writes, there's actually 3 players I would love to see growth from: Sennett, Newton, and I would love to see an MVP season from 5. Those are all great options. Even Jaden Daniels, you know, for as good as he was last year, there's more, right? There's plenty more. And we know it. And that's what makes him so scary. and special and dangerous is that he's just scratching the surface. He's just scratching the surface of what he could be. And us getting him adequate protection up front, us adding more weapons around him, especially if we add that dynamic back into the backfield, and then wait till we get a dynamic pass catching tight end. We still don't have that yet. But Ertz has been phenomenal, and I don't want to undersell what he's been for us and what he was for Jaden last year, because in the red zone, he was money, right? So there's something to be said about a savvy vet that knows how to get open, which is what Zach Ertz is. We keep asking for all this speed, but, you know, give me the guy that knows how to get open over the guy that, you know, isn't, you know, that type of player. So Antoine Hoskins, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Antoine writes, would you take Lacey in the 4th round? I don't see any team. I mean, it'll be day 3 if somebody were going to take a flyer on Lacey, the wide receiver from LSU that has had all of that trouble off the field. He's working. I've seen videos. He's working out. I've also heard he's an absolute head case. And, you know, I've seen this movie before where a guy tries to clean up his image and his act so that a team will roll the dice on him draft time. Then you get him. Well, you can't steer away too far from who you truly are, right? You can clean, like, I remember watching the Johnny Manziel documentary and seeing Johnny Manziel do the things that he did just so he could be draftable. But that wasn't who Johnny was at that time. And Johnny was a loose cannon. He was a wild man. And he cleaned up his act just enough to get drafted in the 1st round. And then he went back to being Johnny football. So I don't know. I'm going to tell you right now. He doesn't strike me. And again, if I'm doing my homework on this guy, I'm DQ, Adam Peters, and I got resources in that locker room. Jaden Daniels is there. Played with him at LSU. However, I'm not going to allow someone to come in here and mess up the chemistry that we've built in the type of character that we're building, or the type of character that we want in that locker room. I don't know if he fits in there. I don't think he fits in that mix. Tony P, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Tony P, writes, hey, Lou, what's up, Tony? I don't think we're done. AP plays chess, not checkers. How about our first 2 and over the cap Atlanta for AJ Terrell getting back a 3rd and a 5th? I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening, but again, I wouldn't rule anything out. Who saw the Laremy Tunsil trade coming? None of us. So and none of us, we thought we were going to be players at the trade deadline last year. We didn't know we were trading for Marshawn Lattimore. So anything's possible with AP. Anything's possible. And he's already shown us he'll go to any length to improve this roster. So I wouldn't rule him out. I wouldn't rule anything out. Jared talks football. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Jared writes, trading Daron Payne would make sense because we're overpaying him too. We would just repeat what we just did with Jay and Payne and have Newton and a stud from this draft. Again, I wouldn't rule it out. Nothing is out of bounds with Adam Peters. And this would be the year, like I said earlier, this would be the year to trade Payne. If you were interested in dealing him, this would be the year to do it. He's got 2 years left on his contract, so it makes more sense than to hold on to him like you did with Jonathan Allen and then try to trade him when he's got 1 year left, and now it's a rental. If you're going to move him, now's the time, and this is when he has the most value. So I get where you're coming from. I just don't see it happening, but I wouldn't rule it out. We signed a lot of defensive tackles. Again, and you could draft one, as you said. So there's that. You're getting some capital back. You might be able to draft one. So again, I get it. I understand that, but I just don't see it happening. Steve, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Steve writes, Lou, what do you think about running back Basul Tootin from Virginia Tech? Ran the fastest 40 at the combine. Again, another guy that you can add to the mix. He was what I was talking about when I say change of pace. He would not be an every down back that you hand the ball to, but he would be a guy that you would put in there to throw a screen to, a guy that you would run some draws to, a guy that you would try to get out into space, a guy that you could put in those formations where you want to throw a wide receiver screen to a running back, instead of throwing that wide receiver screen to Brian Robinson Jr. like we were doing all last year, or Austin Eckler, now you can throw that wide receiver screen to Basol Tootin and let him take off and get a gap like Terry did in the NFC divisional round game against Detroit. He does have a fumbling issue, does need to clean that up. That was an issue at Virginia Tech. But when you talk about a guy that's a burner, that's a change of pace, he is exactly what I am referring to. Is he an every down back in this league? No, he's not. But if that's not what you're looking for, if you're just looking for an explosive dynamic back to help bolster this offense and give you another explosive weapon in that backfield, that's a guy you're looking to add. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that is going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys. I think later on tonight, if everything goes well, I'll probably be back with a LouieTeeNetwork podcast episode. Lots to discuss there. We haven't had a podcast since early last week, so I may try to jump on later on tonight and do one. If not, you'll see me with the LouieTeeNetwork podcast episode tomorrow for sure. Swaggy P, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Swaggy P writes, Chef P always got something up his sleeve. I expected draft day surprise move. Again, nothing's out of bounds with this man. He's always in the kitchen cooking up some shit at all times. So at this point now, I just assume, hey, be ready and expect the unexpected, right? Expect the unexpected. I love our general manager because much like Howie Roseman, he's not afraid to take a risk. He's not afraid to trade for a guy and go make something happen. He's not waiting for something. He's looking to attack success. And I love it. I love it here. I love it here. So we'll see. I'm not expecting anything, but I won't be surprised if it does happen. That's for sure. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. Hopefully see you later on tonight for a LouieTeeNetwork podcast episode. If not, definitely see you tomorrow. And we'll get the draft coverage going this week. I've already started getting all of my ducks lined up for that. So you will get a video starting that process this week, and we will go on. And once we hit the ground running, we're gone, and we're not looking back until late April when the draft arrives. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. You guys have a good one. Take care. God bless. Good night.